The fourth era in American history that we're going to analyze briefly is from 1963 to 1981. And thus far, it's sort of like been a back and forth. Each era, you have like the national government becomes more powerful, and then the states, and then the next one is the national government. This is going to be the first time that we're looking at back-to-back eras where you see like the continuation of something. 1963 to 1981 is like almost like a doubling down period in terms of a time in which the national government becomes even more aggressive, more powerful, and more assertive. This time period is often referred to as fiscal or coercive federalism. The national government during this time period, and again, we had talked about like previously the ability of the 16th Amendment, which allowed the United States government to collect an income tax from the citizens, would greatly expand the economic power of the national government. And the national government began to realize that the economic power that they had over the states could be used to sort of like push the states into doing things that maybe otherwise they couldn't be forced to do. So it's called an era of fiscal federalism, fiscal meaning money, because the United States government is using its money supply to coerce or force the states into doing things that otherwise the national government couldn't make them do. So one of the things that happens during this time period is the national government begins to sort of like almost bully the states into doing certain things by giving them an opportunity to have what are called categorical grants. Categorical grants are money that are provided by the national government to the states for a specific purpose. If you think about like a loan is something that you get from something that you have to pay back. Grants you don't have to pay back. You're just given the money. But in the case of a categorical grant, this money given from the national government to the states, you can only get the money if you agree to do something specific for the national government. So the national government is like using its money supply to like force the states into doing certain things. These are the types of grants that the states often will take, but they don't like because it sort of like forces them to do exactly what the national government wants, right? So, like for example, in the 1970s, dealing with like the oil shortage, like the gas crunch in the United States at the time, there was a national sort of speed limit that was put into place, um, basically establishing a 55 mile an hour like national speed limit. Something that perhaps the national government couldn't necessarily force the states to do like otherwise. But the bottom line was the national government would offer lots of money for the states to fix like roads and infrastructure within the state. And the states depended on that money. The only way you could get that grant money is if you agreed to adhere to this 55 mile an hour speed limit, right? And that's in existence for a short period of time. The other interesting one, which is kind of similar, is a law passed in the 1980s called the National Minimum Drinking Age Act. And if you look, these are the minimum drinking ages like internationally. But you may be surprised to know that there actually isn't a national drinking age established in the United States today, like a minimum drinking age. Everybody says 21, but that's a state decision. It's not like a national rule. But in the 1980s, the national government sort of like pushes or coerces the states into all essentially choosing the age of 21. And they do this by the following. Again, the states depend on the federal government for like these categorical grants to like fix the roads and the highways within their state. The national government in the 1980s basically said you're free to establish the limit, the minimum drinking age at something other than 21. If you want to go lower, that's your prerogative. But as soon as you do that, you're going to forfeit all of the sort of funding that comes from the national government to fix the roads in your state, which the state governments desperately need. So every state basically falls in line and does what the national government wants, and they establish it at 21. Otherwise, the national government wouldn't have the power to do that, but they essentially use the money as a bribe to push the states into doing something that they want them to do. So again, this is a time period where the government uses its money supply sort of to force the states to do what it wants. And you see these categorical grants, which are these like money that's given from the national government to the states with all of these strings attached as a way for them to do this.